Tyra yawned and stretched in the morning gloom. She edged closer to their small fire, eyeing the semicircle of sacks on one side. They squirmed occasionally, looking like giant bombardier beetle grubs wriggling over the snow. "Think they'll freeze before she gets here? Should we make the fire bigger, boss?"
Sure,"
Tyra replied. "Get breakfast started, too. No point freezing and starving while we wait."
"How long will it take for her to get here?"
"Shouldn't be that long," Tyra said. "Our intel says she's been doing 2 or 3 adventurer commissions a night when the demi-human merchant stops in the cities." The other ninjas arranged more branches over the fire. The blaze rose to emit waves of comfortable warmth. "Isn't that a lot?" One of them held out his hands towards the fire. "Adamantite teams usually take a week or more to do one. They were local mithril and orichalcum jobs, but yeah, she's fast."
"I've never heard of a bard moving that quickly."
"The agents all say she's a dancer," Tyra replied, "so she should be pretty athletic. She also might have a spell song that helps her get around quickly. Plus anyone in the realm of heroes is bound to have some weird skills and abilities." One became less predictable the stronger they were. This was a general rule that could be applied to any target, regardless of their vocation. A silver rank bard could be expected to have a half-dozen or so simple spell songs mastered. They would have rudimentary skills with a light weapon, such as a rapier, but no martial arts. Depending on how fussy they were about fashion, they would wear anything up to medium armor and were about as durable as a rogue of the same rank. Past that point, things became increasingly complicated. While the vast majority of bards were civilians who worked as creatives, entertainers, scholars, diplomats and information brokers, those who became strong were adventurers, workers or something along those lines. In the case of those bards, the needs of their teams tended to influence their specializations. If their party needed a more substantial front line, they could become more like warriors, learning to be more proficient with their weapons and picking up martial arts, skills and spell songs related to that role. It was more common that they functioned as backline support, using ranged weaponry and spell songs. This was the most beaten path because teams could break up and fall apart, leaving those who filled a strangely specialized niche in an awkward situation. But where did a dancer fit on that scale? Tyra's initial speculation was that she was something like a monk. A human needed something like ki to reinforce their bodies so they could fight effectively unarmed. Alternatively, she could have a magic item that improved her unarmed attacks or wielded floating weapons that she didn't equip in cities. She was wearing bracers that matched her outfit, which were probably some variant of bracers of armor. Tyra noted several rings, one of which could have been a ring of protection. Between those 2 items, a dancer in the realm of heroes would have protection equivalent to a warrior in chainmail, at least. Since she was from the Sorceress Kingdom, it wouldn't be a surprise if her magic items were strong enough to bestow protection superior to full plate. So annoying. The speed of a monk, the grace of a dancer and the defense of a paladin. Assuming she actually did work solo, it also meant that she was either skilled in unarmed combat or she had powerful spell songs that made up for a lack of combat skills. Or maybe she had both just because she could. How quickly one grew in strength and picked up new things was highly dependent on their natural aptitudes. Still, Tyra was fairly certain that they could win. She was a ninja in the realm of heroes, supported by 24 clan members equivalent to mithril and orichalcum adventurers. The strength of Arjanier was such that even nations could not impose their will upon them. "Boss, someone's coming." Tyra looked up from the fire. Since the Imperial officer was in the garrison when they abducted the others, there were concerns that the Imperial army would be dragged in. There was no way they could respond this quickly, however. "Any sign of allies?" she asked. "Someone said that she might have a team in hiding somewhere to get those jobs done so quickly." "I don't think so. Even if they were invisible, they'd still leave tracks in the snow. Unless they were all rangers. Or flying." "Let's get in position." Tyra walked away from the warmth of the fire. "I can't wait to go home for a good, hot soak." "Oh yeah, this bard has some crazy persuasive powers. Make sure you fortify yourselves against them." Their ambush point was halfway up the series of frozen falls. There were a number of lethal traps and the treacherous footing would make their target vulnerable to ranged attacks from the cliffs above. A half-dozen ninjas buried themselves in the snow while the others waited out of sight. Tyra checked the deadfall trap at the top of the first cliff. She took a deep breath before looking over the edge. "So you've come, eh?" A stupid noise came out of her mouth. The target had arrived, but rather than stopping to figure out how to make her way, she was walking straight up the sheer cliff. A spider climb? No, that's a frozen waterfall. Tyra gave her head a shake. Stop right there, Tyra called out. The bard stopped. She was standing perpendicular to the ice as if she were on level ground, so it had to have been some sort of skill. Oh, if it isn't Miss Tia, Shiva smiled. Fancy meeting you here. I went to investigate what you told me back at Delanel. The buildings are certainly old, but there weren't any records or local folklore of relevance. Still, thank you for letting me know. Not a problem, Tyra smiled back. If you know, wait. This damn bard. Tyra purged Shiva's attack and scowled down at her. She was a master at making people drop their guard so she could use her ridiculous abilities to subvert their will. Was that how she did jobs so quickly? Just talking to her targets and convincing them to kill each other off? Is something the matter? Shiva tilted her head curiously. I need to get to a place further up ahead. Don't play dumb with me, Tyra said. But I'm not. I really have to go. Why you are? I know that you know that I know that you know what's going on here. I'm not even sure what's going on here, never mind knowing what you know about me knowing about you knowing about what I know. Look, Tyra said, I'm the one that ordered those people taken from your suite while you were away. I led you to Farsound in the first place so that could happen. Oh. Damn it. Did she just give herself away? No, she was supposed to know all that by now. In that case, the bard asked, where are they? They're safe, Tyra told her. And they'll continue to be safe so long as you follow our instructions. First, take off your gear. Why? I just said why. They won't be hurt as long as you listen. How exactly will they be hurt if I don't listen? I don't see the connection. Is she some sort of idiot? Tyra looked around. Was she stalling for time? She drew her dagger and pointed it at Shiva. Do it or they die. Oh, that's a nice dagger. Thanks. Nope. Nope. Hurry up. You don't have to shoo. Strip. The bard cringed at Tyra's shout. She slipped off her rings and unclasped her braces. Then the necklace came off, followed by the silvery chain around her waist. Everything went into a pouch on her left hip. Shiva looked back up at Tyra. All of your gear, Tyra said, your clothing and shoes, as well. But now's not the time to be worried about being naked, yeah? The lives of everyone you care about are at stake. But I am naked. Shiva protested. What is with you humans and this obsession with nudity anyway? I mean it. I mean it, too. Look. The form of the bard shifted as she stood on the sheer ice. Tyra's eyes widened as she realized what was going on. Oh, shit. She kicked out a foot to trigger the deadfall trap before leaping back and running off. Boulders and huge chunks of ice tumbled down the waterfall. Eep. Shiva's voice drifted up from behind. Hey, what was that for? Tyra frantically made her way up the frozen cascades, mind racing for a solution to their predicament. A dragon. A freaking dragon. A dancing dragon? What can we do? Shiva being a dragon changed the rules of the fight completely. Sneak attacks were nearly impossible to pull off and being outdoors in a frozen alpine valley was to the dragon's advantage. Could they overpower her? She was white, so she was probably one of the frost dragons rumored to work for the sorceress kingdom. Frost dragons were the smallest and weakest of the generally evil chromatic dragons. Could they exploit their rumored stupidity? She did seem pretty dumb. Tyra had never seen a frost dragon before, so all she could rely on were the highly embellished tales of them. Not that there were many. There were more exciting, powerful dragons that the bards could sing about. Frost dragons were weak, dumb, small and at most bit villains in short tales of adventures in the wilds. She was much smaller than an adult green, which Tyra could kill, but it didn't indicate what age category the frost dragon was. Then there was the fact that she was a bard. How much power did she have as one? Just as demi-humans could become far more powerful than the vast majority of their kind by picking up specialized vocations, a dragon who did the same thing was a force to be reckoned with. She could even be a dragon lord. They would not be entirely reliant on instinct and raw strength. They started using equipment and the law that would-be dragon slayers relied upon was no longer effective. Their target was horrendously powerful and a complete mystery.
A head shrouded in black popped up from the cliff ahead.
Boss,
What's happening? Dragon.
we're in for it.
Wingbeats sounded behind her, accompanied by waves of primal dread.
Shit.
Shit. The 6 ninjas hidden in the snow leapt up and fled. Tyra shook off the effect, but it seemed that only 1 or 2 others had withstood the onslaught of dragon fear.
Oh,
3 of you resisted it, that's pretty good.
Tyra turned to face the voice as she reached the others. Shiver settled on the ice before them, reassuming her human form.
See? I was naked.
What are we going to do, boss?
Thinking. Their ambush was in shambles.
A cold bead of sweat trickled between
Tyra's shoulder blades.
Once upon a time, Ijanias found fought a dragon with the rest of the heroes of old.
They were soundly defeated, never to recover again.
Was history about to repeat itself? We can't run, we need to drive her away somehow. At least she can't use her breath attack in that form.
We can immobilize her while you get some good hits in.
This fog is going to help too. Fog? Tyra narrowed her eyes at the mist forming over the ground. That's one of her abilities. She's a frost dragon,
we can't let her blind us.
The 2 men reacted immediately, splitting off to either side. Tyra charged forward, throwing 2 sets of 3 kunai at their target.
Immovable binding.
Shiver froze in place from a technique employed by one of the other ninjas, but the 6 kunai bounced harmlessly off of her body. Tyra eyed the iron projectiles as they fell into the ankle-deep snow.
Well, that answers one question.
The frost dragon was old enough that penetrating her scales required magic weapons.
Now the question was how substantial her damage reduction was.
Their foe broke free of the ninja technique, darting towards the man who had used it
against her. Immovable binding.
She was frozen again as the other man used the same technique against her. Tyra came in, dagger brandished. The split-second opening she thought she had wasn't there. A slender hand shot out and seized her wrist. Shadow clone. Tyra left the frost dragon holding her clone, using Shadow Step to appear on the other side of her. Shiver pivoted away as Tyra's dagger plunged in. The blade planted itself into her clone, who had been forcefully positioned as a shield. The shadow clone wore a surprised expression as it disintegrated into nothingness. Damn it, she doesn't even have to look. Who the hell taught a dragon how to fight? Dragons were supposed to be ferocious and angry and savage and raw. One fighting with cool discipline and refined skill had to be against the rules somehow. Through the thickening mists, a pale fist flew in. Immovable adamantite shield. A scintillating prismatic shield blossomed in front of Tyra. Shiver's fist slammed into it. Cracks grew from the point of impact like damaged glass, but the shield did not break. The frost dragon gave the 6-pointed star the briefest of glances before darting away. Oh no, you don't. Immovable binding. Shiver froze in place again. This time, she visibly struggled to break free. While the others couldn't hold her, it seemed that Tyra was close enough in relative power for her techniques to be effective. She kept her fixed in place, then realized that the fog had become so thick that the others couldn't see what was going on. I caught her. Tyra called out, "Get in here." 6 dark figures appeared out of the mist, closing on their immobilized target. The 4 shadow clones couldn't injure her, but the 2 real ninjas could. Owie. Their adversary kicked away one of the ninjas when Tyra's bind expired, then the 5 other figures piled onto her. Tyra made her way in as Shiver cast away the shadow clones. The remaining ninja clung to her waist, activating another ninja art. Bursting flame column. IEEE. Shiver and the other ninja were blasted away into the fog by a tremendous explosion of flame. Tyra concealed herself, alert for any sound or movement. Fire was the bane of frost dragons. Had they done enough damage to drive her away? She gathered her steps, silently stalking towards the place where she had last seen the frost dragon. There were a few spots of blood on the snow around the rapidly freezing puddle, but nothing suggested any significant injuries. Where did she go? Though daylight grew brighter, Tyra could see nothing through the summoned fog. She hurried through the swirling mists, searching for the edge of the obscuring cloud. Along the way, she came across markings in the snow, signs of struggles that had gone unseen and unheard. Her dragon fear must have worn off. She withdrew to deal with the others. A sinking feeling filled the pit of Tyra's stomach as she came across more and more violently disturbed patches of snow. Minutes of wandering passed before a stiff gust of wind blew the fog away. Tyra reoriented herself. She was 100 meters or so from the fire they had set up. She stared in disbelief at what she saw there. Her subordinates were bound, gagged and neatly arranged into a line. Standing over them were ninjas? She didn't recognize the markings on their uniforms, but they were almost certainly ninjas. Tyra wasn't aware of any other ninja clans in the region. What she was aware of, however, was the fact that they were unfathomably strong. I was wondering when you would come out, Miss Tia. Shiva appeared from a few meters away. No sign of injury was visible on her person. You weren't even in there? Of course not, the frost dragon in human form replied. I never needed to fight you, I was just here to pick up my minions. And your friends here. Everyone in your base, too. What? Tyra's face turned towards Ijarnia's distant base, which was all but invisible from where they were. They're safe, Shiva told her. And they'll continue to be safe so long as you follow our instructions. I won't even yell at you to stop squirming. Nemel's fingers worked gingerly to undo the knot holding the wriggling sack shut. Every time she brushed against the person inside, they would react by tossing about with panicked squeaks, undoing all of her progress. I can't stop. I'm not trying to hurt you. I can't work this knot loose if you... A hand reached out to pick up the sack. Dame Verilyn deftly undid the string and dumped the occupant out onto the snow. Quagga aren't particularly strong as far as demi-humans go, she told Nemel, but they're relatively durable. Rough treatment by human standards is nothing to them. Zushiro rolled to a stop. He frantically flipped about, trying to look everywhere at once. After several seconds of panic, his beady eyes settled on Dame Verilyn. Wife. With a tearful cry, Zushiro leapt up, wrapping his arms around Dame Verilyn's waist. He nuzzled her belly, sniffling as he made soft crooning noises. Dame Verilyn did not draw away, nor did she make any move to comfort him, so Nemel couldn't decide whether it was a touching scene or not. Nearby, the vampire brides freed Zushiru's apprentices. Fendros, Elise and Ida went over to warm themselves in front of the fire, eyes wide as they took in the frozen alpine landscape. A dozen tied-up assassins were clustered nearby, being watched by what appeared to be even more assassins. Lady Shiltir came by with an attractive woman adorned in loose clothing with a black breastplate. Her blonde hair was tied up into a short ponytail and her garb matched those of the other assassins. Why were there so many of them? How did the world not run out of people with so many contract killers around? The vampire walked over to Fendros, Elise, and Ida, who fidgeted nervously under her crimson gaze. So, Lady Shiltir said, these are your new minions. Yes, my lady, Dame Verilyn's voice held a note of pride. This is... I approve, the vampire licked her lips and smiled. They're all very cute. It would please me if you gathered more. Cute? What sort of criteria was that? Lady Shiltir was just as inexplicable as Lady Zaradnik when it came to how they determined that someone was qualified for service. Have you done anything with them, by the way? Lady Shiltir asked. I've done many things with them, We haven't done anything. Nemel cut in. Dame Verilyn might evoke amorous reactions from the people around her, but she was almost certainly clueless about what Lady Shiltir had asked about. Oh. Well, your loss. Lady Shiltir's arm snaked behind the slender waist of the female assassin. The woman visibly stiffened but did not attempt to pull away. Nemel eyed the two with a frown. Did she just squeeze her butt? Cute nobles, Lady Shiltir's voice chimed happily. Cute ninjas, today is a good day. You said my clan was safe, the woman said. Where are they? I will send you to join them soon enough, Lady Shiltir replied. But first, wasn't there something that you wanted to ask her about, Dame Verilyn? Was there? Dame Verilyn frowned. Why did you take my minions, Miss Tia? Tyra. The frost dragon in human form froze. Huh? My name is Tyra. But you told me it was Tia. I lied. Arg. Do you have any idea what is involved with me remembering things? You didn't have any issues remembering my name, Lady Shiltir noted. You know exactly why I remember your name, my lady. Meaning my methods are effective, Lady Shiltir nodded. Shall we have her do the same?
Dame Verilyn leapt away from the assassin. "No, thank you," the frost dragon said. "She can just be Tia from now on." "But that's my sister's name." "Well, too bad for her." "Wait, how come I didn't smell anyone that might be your sister up at that base?" "Because my sisters weren't there." "If they're anything like you," Lady Shultier said, "we should go and pick them up. Just tell me where and we'll go get them." Did she want to pick them up because they were powerful assassins, or because they were cute ninjas? "They're not with us anymore." "Oh, did they die?" "I can fix that." "No, they left the clan. Cut ties with us in the middle of a job." "I see," Lady Shiltier waved a hand dismissively. "We only want loyal people, so forget that." "Were there any others afield?" "Someone mentioned agents and such." "We have our information network and some people are out completing contracts. We can contact them once we know what's going on, and once we see that our clan members are safe." Lady Shiltier turned a curious look up at Tyra. "You seem to care a lot for your people despite being a cold-blooded killer." "Work is work. I'm the heiress of Ijarnia, they're my clan and I'm responsible for them." "I see." The vampire turned her attention to an open spot in the snow. "Well, so long as you understand who it is that you serve." The portal of a gate spell opened before them. Tyra eyed the hole in the air suspiciously. "What's that?" "Your clan is being accommodated on the other side. You wished to see them, yes?" Nearby, the other assassins were freed from their restraints. They went over to stand with their leader. "You didn't answer my question," Dame Verilyn said. "Why did you take my minions?" "To get you alone out here," Tyra replied. "So we could kill you." "Why?" "Because we were hired to. We don't know the reason why, only that people we discover digging too far into the past are to be silenced. We've had that job since we started taking contracts nearly 2 centuries ago and it seems to be older than our organization. I wouldn't be surprised if other groups have been hired for the same job." "Who is it, though?" Nemel asked. "You get paid, right?" "It goes through middlemen and drop boxes," Tyra answered. "It's not our business to know who is hiring us or why, we just do it." "That's just irresponsible. People are killed just because someone had the money to get rid of them." "Yeah." Nemel narrowed her eyes at Tyra. She cared about her people but seemed entirely unbothered about killing other people for money. "Time to move," Lady Shiltier clapped her hands lightly. "Get in there." "The rest of you, too." "Us?" Nemel asked. "Unless you want to walk back to wherever you came from, Ilishnish." "How far is it?" "Far sound is a week away as the Quagoa waddles. Without supplies, they definitely wouldn't be able to make it back down to the coast." "Fly back to where your wagons are," she told her. "Message me once you've prepared your cargo and staff." "Yes, my lady." Dame Verilyn transformed into a frost dragon, winging her way to the northwest. Nemel stepped through the portal after Tyra and the other assassins. Rather than finding herself in some sort of dungeon to hold the members of Ijarnia, Nemel stepped out into a spacious plaza. Around her was what appeared to be a large town under construction. Many of the buildings being raised, however, were of unknown design. Dominating the horizon to the northwest was the familiar sight of the Azalizia Mountains. "This is the border with the Sorceress Kingdom?" "Indeed," Lady Shiltier's voice came from behind her. "You're familiar with this place?" "Until recently, I was working in the Katsa Marches, my lady. If this is the border, then that should mean this is the town that's been under construction for the last few months." "It's the capital of Wagner County," Lady Shiltier told her. "I don't think Lian's settled on a name yet. Anyway, your people are being housed in that keep to the north, Tyra. The person who will be in charge of you is currently busy, so it may take a week or two to make formal arrangements." The ninja heiress sent her gaze towards the tower a few kilometers away. Nemel was familiar with the structure from her patrols out of Ingelfort. It was one of 2 old keeps that straddled the highway near the former border of Riastais and the Empire. "If we have to wait that long," Tyra asked, "what will we do about supplies?" "You can buy groceries from this town." "You'll just let us go wherever? Do you think we can't hunt you down if you run?" "No. It's good that you understand," Lady Shiltier nodded with a smile. "Humans often take far too long to digest reality. That aside, I do not believe you will find your conditions here disagreeable. While you wait, you may go anywhere you wish in the Sorceress Kingdom.
If you manage to sneak your way into anywhere you're not supposed to be, then you will be more valuable to us than you currently appear. Just don't perform any other criminal acts in the process. That is all." Lady Shiltier turned away at the last, seemingly uncaring about whether the assassins heeded her or not, or the fact that hundreds of assassins had been dumped into the Sorcerer's Kingdom. Tyra and her subordinates silently exchanged glances before walking off in the direction of the keep. Nemel was still somewhat confused over everything that had happened. Were things in the Sorcerer's Kingdom always so abrupt and inexplicable? It was as if none of her common sense applied. As her tension dissipated, Nemel's stomach growled at the aroma of freshly baked bread wafting through the air. "You may go for breakfast, if you wish," Lady Shiltier told them. "Dame Verilyn should be a while yet." Nemel went over to Fendros and the others, who looked similarly disoriented. A mix of human militia and powerful-looking undead occasionally patrolled the streets. None of the townsfolk seemed to mind the undead, and Zushiru had already disappeared somewhere with his apprentices. Maybe they were long used to such absurdities. "Let's get some breakfast?" Nemel asked. I guess," Fendros replied. "I'm still trying to come to grips with the fact that we just crossed the entire empire in a single step." They wandered over to the completed side of the town. Along the way, they stopped and stared as a gigantic glowing galleon sailed through the air overhead. Points of crimson light shone down from the undead crew looking at them from the railing. The ship continued flying for several hundred meters before settling in front of a busy warehouse. Eventually, they found themselves in front of a death bread. Unlike those in the Empire, this one was as crowded as the most popular bakeries in our winter. The crowd here, however, wasn't all human. Nemel hesitated at the sight of a group of toad demi-humans at the end of the line, then relaxed as some human townsfolk queued up between them. 10 minutes later, Nemel went over to a covered dining area in the plaza nearby. Upon entering, they discovered that it was magically heated. "I guess we're not the only people who thought of doing this," Elise said as she unwrapped her pastry. "Is everyone in the Sorcerer's Kingdom rich? Magical lighting is one thing, but everything we see is so advanced." That much was certainly true. An urban center would already be considered prosperous if it had magical lighting and paved roads, but the unnamed town went far beyond that. It wasn't even a matter of the town being new. The fact that the town had things most cities couldn't afford spoke volumes on its own. That it didn't even have a name yet made it seem that such things were commonplace. In any imperial city, one would find a mix of familiar architecture that denoted the wealth of the occupants. Even in our winter's second-class districts, most buildings were some compromise between stone foundations and wattle and daub. None of that could be seen here. Everything was constructed from stone that seemed to be tastefully carved from the ground up with a uniform degree of excellent craftsmanship. Not only did the streets have magical lighting, but bright illumination could be seen in every building. Their windows were wide open in the cold winter morning, yet none of the residences had wood smoke rising from their chimneys. This likely meant that they had magical heating as well. Aside from our winter, cities in the Empire only had their major thoroughfares paved. Even the alleys of this town were paved and the streets had raised sidewalks. The pavement was not fashioned out of cobblestone, but something that Nemel could only recognize as seamless strips of stone. The plazas were also paved out of the same material, and whoever planned the city layout included plenty of green spaces, or at least they would be green if it wasn't winter. That gave the townscape a pleasant, relaxing feel. "Do you think all of the places in the Sorcerer's Kingdom are like this?" Elise asked. "Riestais didn't look this way, right?" "I haven't been to Riestais before." Ida looked around idly, but the lecturers at the academy always said that Riestais was 3 or 4 steps below the Empire in terms of its urban centers and infrastructure. You can tell that this place is even more advanced than the Empire, but you can barely draw any connections to human architecture in the buildings. The Sorcerer's Kingdom hasn't even been here for a year yet, right? How could things have become so different so much so quickly? The way by which Lady Zaradnik carried herself in Norford made a lot more sense now. She might have been a human noble, but the world that she saw was an entirely different one. Maybe Lady Zaradnik was exaggerating about her territory being in the middle of nowhere, Fendros said. Things might be far easier than we expected. "I don't think she would mislead us like that," Nemel replied. "If anything, all this around us is worrying me. I thought we would be raising little hamlets to generate some income for Dame Verilyn. Maybe she was actually expecting us to match this." Everyone at the table paled and swallowed. That's unreasonable, isn't it? Elise said, I know people like to think that wizards can do anything, but this is definitely impossible for us. What's impossible for you? Nemel nearly leapt out of her seat as Dame Verilyn appeared beside the table. That's, when you said you wanted us to help manage your domain, did you mean building a town like this? Since humans are the way that they are, Dame Verilyn said, I assume that the territory I have allocated for this style of development will eventually become like this. But not right away? It will happen when it happens. Sighs of relief rose from around the table. Nemel looked at the bag dangling from one of Dame Verilyn's hands. By the looks of it, she had picked up a stack of meat pies for herself and the Quagga, as usual. Where's Master Sharu? Nemel asked. Offloading the inventories he planned on returning with to the Sorceress Kingdom in one of the warehouses here. After that, Lady Shiltir will be dropping us off at the next destination on his tour. The next destination, Nemel furrowed her brow. Do you mean Elanel or? No, Dame Verilyn replied, the place after that. However, Zushiru says that there will be a change of plans from there. We'll be heading to our winter instead of going south. That's a big detour, Nemel said. Do you know why? The Merchant Guild has issued an advisory for the area, Dame Verilyn told them. Apparently, fighting has erupted along the southern border of the Empire. Lady Zaradnik? Lady Zaradnik. Damn it, I lost her again. Joachim was short of stature compared to the average man in the Empire, so tiptoeing offered him a little better of a view over the crowds in the busy fortress town of Aoten. He edged his way past the groups of Imperial Knights clustered in front of the inns and brothels in the lanes off of the settlement's main street. His head turned to scan the streets as he went. As eye-catching as she was, he still couldn't believe how easy Lady Zaradnik was to lose track of. As much as the noble from the Sorceress Kingdom frowned over the nearby establishments and the services that they offered to the fortress and its attendant division, she seemed to care little about the fact that she was being seen in the same place. Unlike a regular imperial noblewoman who might become uncomfortable with the setting because of all the men and what they came for or the scandals that might follow in her wake, the Baroness had a whole other slew of reasons as to why she didn't like the locale. This dislike stemmed from the fact that she was a follower of the six great gods with all of the strangeness that the faith of the six entailed. As an adherent of Sursana, a god of death, judgment and justice, the restrictive nature of her religion was magnified through her similarly strict character. To her, the behavior of the soldiers was abhorrent to her sensibilities because many of them were too young, which meant under 20. Followers of the six considered chastity a virtue until the age of 20. After which chastity was then discouraged in adults. Sex was natural and healthy and encouraged, especially if it resulted in children. This had its own caveats, of course. Foremost was that they pursued their relationships with the objective of getting married and starting a family. Attraction between men and women had criteria, vocational success, lineage, and bloodlines determined through a mysterious system of its own. There was zero tolerance for inbreeding, though that part wasn't a bad thing. They pursued family life religiously, according to tenets that Joachim could only see as esoteric and borderline tyrannical. Chastity was considered a virtue in the faith of the four because it symbolized purity. In the faith of the six, chastity and youth was promoted as a virtue because it was a form of control that allowed the temples to keep track of the bloodlines that they fanatically maintained. Fidelity and monogamous relationships was virtuous for the same underlying reason. Every follower of the six approached matches in a way akin to the imperial nobility, except that wealth, influence and station had no bearing on how they weighed potential partners. Being a noble was just a collection of responsibilities and tasks, considered much the same as a blacksmith, farmer or merchant. Everything that followers of the six did was about what they believed refined the collective strength of humanity and ensured its survival as a species. Indeed, Lady Zaradnik didn't have a problem with brothels themselves, she had a problem with how they promoted the wrong criteria for attraction and sex, weakening humanity as a whole. Once Joachim finally managed to wrap his head around that piece of ludicrous superstition, he could only wonder what a brothel in the slain theocracy was like. Did they even need brothels? A soldier could probably just go to the local temple and their priests would readily produce some equally eager woman and they would go off on their crazy way. Followers of the six were just that strange. Joachim could only squirm uncomfortably with how natural Lady Zaradnik was about the entire thing. She was a product of a culture forged around the tenets of a mad faith, and many things that he found wrong about it were right to her. There was no room for debate, they were simply irreconcilable. Despite his efforts to keep his personal beliefs from potentially resulting in an altercation with a member of a religion notorious for its brutal zealotry, he feared that someone would start an argument at some point. The result would surely be a blood-filled crater where a company's encampment used to be. The Baroness was the sort who would impose her draconian values on her subjects, bear dozens of children on demand, and happily rush off to commit atrocities in the name of her evil undead god. He feared to imagine what sort of dismal place her domain might be, though it would probably be fitting for the sorceress kingdom. Something tugged at his sleeve as he approached the end of the street. A cool, feminine voice sounded at his shoulder. "I'm not sure what people will think if they see a member of your priesthood gaping at a brothel district like that." My lady," Joachim jumped. "I was actually looking for you." I mean, I know what you meant," the Baroness replied. "I've already spoken to Captain Randall. Let's head back out." He could only dash after her, praying that she wouldn't vanish again. The blistering pace at which she conducted her duties had Joachim constantly worrying that he would be left behind. Over the past week or so, they went from garrison to garrison, visiting each division of the 5th Legion to deliver cavalry squads composed of monstrously powerful undead. She spoke briefly with each commander, who always seemed shocked over her abrupt appearance, snatched up the first company that was brave enough to work with the undead, and dragged them off for familiarization with their new supplementary security forces. Outside of the town gate, Joachim sat down on a stump to catch his breath. Lady Zaradnik seemed no less weary than she was before. Rangers were well known for their endurance, but she may as well have been tireless. "Did Captain Randall give you any trouble, my lady?" His response was prompt. "Once I delivered the commander's orders," Lady Zaradnik replied. "Were there some worries that you wished to share with me?" No, my lady. Just wondering." Lady Zaradnik turned a curious gaze in his direction, and he did his best not to flinch away. Captain Randall's reputation was known throughout the Wyvernmark, though whether it was good or bad depended on who one asked. The son of a local baron, he was a man who loved to fight, loved to drink, and loved women in mostly that order. The people both adored and hated him for the same qualities. Because he was fair to look upon, however, the general public tended to go soft on him for his faults and praised him for everything else. Captain Randall was a winner in the game of life, but Joachim feared that life would be cut short. If he mistook Lady Zaradnik for one of many young women who lined up to fling themselves onto his bed, he very well may have been flung out of his window instead. She didn't look angry, at least, but she never looked angry. One had to be especially wary around such individuals, as their wrath would often come suddenly or undetected until it was too late. The liaison officer sent by the Sorceress Kingdom was a gallantly beautiful young woman with an exotic, southern look and an exotic, southern accent, and worshipped a god of death. Given everything else about her, the last part would be conveniently ignored by many at their peril. The temple bells tolled to mark mid-morning, and a company of Imperial Knights emerged from the nearby gate. Captain Randall trotted his horse straight towards them, resplendent in his polished full plate. "Baroness Zaradnik," he offered a crisp salute. "Captain Jared Rewendale Randall of the 2nd Division's 1st Company, reporting as ordered." "Thank you for your swift response, Captain Randall," Lady Zaradnik said as she eyed the men forming ranks behind him. "Are we ready to depart?" "The entire company is accounted for, my lady." "Good. This way, Captain." If anything had happened between them in the brothel, neither gave any sign of it. After his gaze went back and forth between the two for several moments, Joachim decided that the Baroness had yet again succeeded in employing her usual tactics. The Imperial Army was an institution steeped in martial tradition, and her approach to interactions exploited a number of cultural elements that its veterans responded positively to. Lady Zaradnik was the perfect weapon to deploy against them, a personification of what they held the highest regard for. She was steel-veiled in silk, carrying herself in such a way that everything else simply fell into place. Baroness Zaradnik turned to lead them down the side of the road to a pasture below the walls of the fortress town. Despite having seen identical undead for nearly 2 weeks now, Joachim was still unsettled by the cavalry squad neatly arranged over the fresh green growth emerging with the final weeks of winter. "I never thought I'd see the like again," Captain Randall said as they stopped at the edge of the field. "Can your men handle them, Captain?" Fighting against them, the captain replied, most assuredly not. But everyone here has seen them before. Captain Randall's voice trailed off as Lady Zaradnik looked past his shoulder. He frowned as he twisted in his saddle to find that the first company had stopped halfway down the slope. The captain cleared his throat. This won't take a moment, my lady. He wheeled his mount back around. Several moments later, the first of the men came down to join them. More than a few gripped the holy symbols hanging from their necks and wrists. The company's clerics sent reproachful looks in Joachim's direction as if questioning how an adherent of the earth god could tolerate the presence of the undead. Like Joachim, they were raised and trained to perceive and treat the undead as anathema, an enemy to all life that could be granted no quarter. Forced to remain silent on the matter, their frustration was plain. Any incidents that they caused would be used by the imperial administration as justification to levy punitive measures against the temples of the Four. They could only watch as the undead gained a foothold in the empire. Lady Zaradnik's soul eater came over and she smoothly mounted the undead steed. Joachim had to run over to get his pale grey warhorse. Shall we get going, Captain Randall? Lady Zaradnik asked. Were there no special instructions, my lady? Nothing that can't be discussed while we ride, the Baroness said. Your men and animals need to grow accustomed to the Death Series servitors before they can begin working with them. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that they have when the time comes. Captain Randall sent his horse into a walk and the Baroness brought her mount alongside his. Joachim fell in beside her, watching the locals hurriedly make way as their column proceeded down the road. If you don't mind my saying so, Lady Zaradnik, the captain said, you appear to be in a hurry. That's because the 5th Legion was a month behind schedule when I arrived, Lady Zaradnik replied. I expected to be consulting with your officers over the nuances of the Death Series servitors and how they could best assist with the realm's security. Instead, well, I'm sure you're more than aware of what's going on. What the 6th Legion is doing demands haste from the 5th Legion. Does that mean you approve or disapprove of their activities? Whether or not I approve has no bearing on the 5th Legion's responsibilities, Captain. The Court Council of the Baharuth Empire has received instructions to supplement the Imperial Army with Death Series servitors. If only it were so simple. I won't pretend that it is, Lady Zaradnik agreed, but our priorities remain unchanged. Not incorporating the undead into your security arrangements would be failing in your duty to the Emperor and as sworn defenders of the Empire. The fact of the matter is that a risk is present and that risk must be accounted for. In its stubborn attempts to dissuade the 6th Legion from acting as it has, the 5th Legion is using Imperial citizens as shields. This is unacceptable. The captain's question had been asked by every officer who interacted with Baroness Zaradnik. Her answer always caused an uneasy feeling to fall over Joachim. She was correct about their duties, but, at the same time, she didn't seem to care that incorporating the undead meant General Ray would be one step closer to vindicating his reckless strategy. With the undead slipping into their roles in the 5th Legion, the leadership of the 6th Legion started to see promise in General Ray's approach. In an unprecedented reversal of the status quo, the Imperial Army had become the raiders and the demi-human tribes were the defenders. While Lady Zaradnik was personally displeased with the result, as far as Joachim knew she was here to assist the 6th Legion with their task. She was as firm as she seemed to everyone that saw her, conducting herself as duty demanded. Hours passed as they followed the distinct line of unmanaged wilderness that marked the southern border of the Empire. Beyond it, a low highland plateau rose like a grim fortress hundreds of kilometers wide. Around noon, Baroness Zaradnik launched into a thorough rundown of the capabilities and roles of Death Cavaliers, explaining the basic ways in which they could be employed in conjunction with Imperial patrols. After each squad was sent with one of the undead to participate in a wide, eastward sweep that covered both sides of the border, Lady Zaradnik, the captain and Joachim joined the last squad in the formation. You seem well accustomed to this, Captain Randall noted. The 2nd Division is the last to receive their Death Series servitors, Lady Zaradnik replied. Next will be to start consulting with the 6th Legion on their expeditionary activities. At this juncture, the captain said, I'm fairly certain that you disapprove of their actions. I believe Captain Ward summed things up nicely as they are relevant to the Imperial Army, Lady Zaradnik told him. The 6th Legion should be fighting their own battles. Joachim stared idly towards the tree line at the mention of his grandfather's name. The Baron and the Baroness had taken quite a liking to one another, enough that one could say that she had been adopted as a sort of granddaughter. Be it in their austere outlook as frontier nobles or their stoic sensibilities, the two felt like kindred spirits. "Captain Ward is the best of us," Captain Randall nodded. "He might not be the strongest, but his existence encapsulates what it means to be a captain of the Imperial Army." The 6th Legion doesn't appear to share that sentiment. A disparaging expression came over the young captain's face. The tone of his voice was equally so. "With how it's been reorganized," he said, "I can hardly call it a legion. I understand the mandate of this expeditionary army group, but it has lost too much of what it means to be part of the Imperial Army. We may as well paint them green." "That might be an insult to goblins, Captain Randall." Captain Randall snorted. "Indeed, my lady. You may be right about that.